We're good? Okay. We're excited to introduce Joe Palaia to talk about interspace. And it looks like he's here to promote, I think, Mars and humans on Mars, and that's why really we're happy to have him. So please welcome Joe Palaia.
Thank you, Lucinda. And thank you to the Mars Society for allowing me to come here and share with you a little bit about the project that I've been working on for about the past year and a half. It's actually through a subsidiary of the company I've been working for 5 years, a startup company called 4 Frontiers, that I co-founded. And the subsidiary is called New Space Center, LLC, and the marketing name for the project is Interspace. Before I get to that, I just wanted to show you my desktop background. This is me up on Devon Island last year when I was on the FMars expedition, but that's another story. So I'll tell you right off the bat, this is a for-profit venture. The presentation I'm giving you now is our non-confidential pitch. So it's a little bit watered down from what I might give to, say, a potential investor. There are certain details that I'm not going to be able to give you, certain questions I won't be able to answer, because believe it or not, there are potential competitors out there. But the project is basically, it's called Interspace. It's going to be a space-themed destination and attraction. And this is an architectural concept, architectural rendering. We actually had a design firm in Orlando called HHCP that worked with us and developed this for us. They actually did and have done a whole slew of resort projects, entertainment projects. They did the SeaWorld Theater, the Shamu Theater at SeaWorld. So this is really professionally done stuff that we've put together here. But this is kind of the tagline. We want to create an immersive, hands-on, real space-themed destination. So this is not aliens and real far-out sci-fi stuff. This is our vision of the future brought to life. So first we have to talk a little bit about the context for this project. I'm sure this audience is well familiar with the emerging commercial spaceflight industry, the new space industry. There are a lot of players out there that are doing some really exciting technology development, developing the hardware and the systems that will allow us to go out into space on a commercial basis, will allow us to buy a ticket and have that experience ourselves. And this is just a sampling. There are a lot more companies than this. This is, gives you an idea of some of the more prominent ones. But the idea is that this is happening now. This is a new barnstorming era that we're in. And a lot of people don't even realize that. They're not internalizing that fact. It's like, imagine that you were living right at the beginning of the aviation era, and you've got all these guys going out there and they're taking risks, they're being daring. This is exciting. This is getting the public very excited and very interested in this. So we see this as an opportunity for us. But there's a problem with this, and that is that for most, this is relatively unaffordable. So I don't know about you. Right now, I don't have 30 million or even a couple hundred K to plop down to buy an actual experience where I'm going to go out into space. Typically, it's remote, so the places where this new space development is happening, places like the Mojave Desert, Spaceport America is in the middle of nowhere. So this is just not accessible to the vast number of people in the public. And the places where the public can go that are accessible to them, this material is just not addressed. So if you look at existing air and space venues, science museums, there's very little focus on this new commercial spaceflight phenomenon that's happening. And also, I think there's not really a focus on what we would all like to think about, which is what would settlement on Mars look like one day. And so we want to incorporate both of these elements into this attraction. Oops. jumping ahead here. So our solution is a project called InnerSpace. And basically, we want to capture the energy and the excitement and the spirit of what's happening in new space and put it on display. Have this be someplace where if you want to learn about new space or you want to learn about what it's going to really be like to go to Mars, then this is where you can go. It's going to have three main sections to it. The first section, the point of entry, is something we call the contact terminal. And this is the new space place. I mean, we're going to have all of the players come in. They're going to have their hardware on display. They're going to have their people there interacting with our guests. This may be an ideal place for some of these companies to make big announcements, have press conferences, and we're going to have live demonstrations here. Also, this is a place where you can go and you can actually buy your ticket to space. So I understand that some small portion, it's not going to be a large portion of the guests or your average person off the street that can afford one of these space experiences, but there will be some. So this is where you can interface with all of these companies that are offering these experiences, learn about them, and actually buy your ticket to go. The second part of the center is something we call the New Space Training Center. The idea here is that you're coming in and there's two flavors to this experience. One is that you're a day visitor. So we call you a space explorer. And you're going to put on the shoes of a space explorer. You're going to have to first go through and be trained to prepare yourself for this space experience. And so the New Space Training Center is the place where that happens. It's dynamic, it's high energy, it's all of these experiences that you can choose from where you get to have that hands-on experience. So, for instance, maybe you get to ride the centrifuge and experience high G-forces. Or we have some pretty sophisticated robots, perhaps like what Kevin was showing with the University Challenge, that are right there in a simulated lunar or Mars environment, and you get to control them. So not like, say, when you go to Epcot Center or a science museum. I was actually very disappointed when I went to Epcot Center, and they have a pretty sophisticated industrial robot arm there, and all you can do is press a button and have it go through a pre-programmed dance. And that's kind of cool, but I'm saying, well, where's the joystick? I want to control that arm and make it do something. So this is a place where you're going to get to use those technologies and actually be the person that's controlling the robots. And we're going to have two flavors to that. So one is going to be ground robots, and then we'll also have aerial robots, or UAVs. And I think this could be a very dynamic area because you've got people coming in, they're trying out the robots, you've got partnerships with various robotic providers, and the technology may be changed out all the time. There'll be a spacesuit experience area. So there are a couple companies now that are working on developing new space suit technologies, either for replacement suits for NASA or to supply for the commercial spaceflight industry. And then there are a number of universities that are working on suit technology pertinent to surface exploration. So this is where you'll get to go to see all the latest and greatest with spacesuits. Also, there's going to be unique in entertainment or even at any of the NASA centers. This is a place where you can go and see a real rocket fire. So it bothers me, for instance, that when you go to Kennedy Space Center, unless you happen to be lucky enough to be there on a day when there's going to be a launch and it doesn't get scrubbed, you can't see a rocket fire. So this is going to be a place where 3 times a day, on schedule, every day, you can go and you can see that rocket fire, and it's a very visceral experience. You can feel the heat, you can feel the rumble, you can hear the sound of it. It's going to be right in front of you. So that's basically the New Space Training Center. The third section, which I think is most pertinent to this audience, is what we call Expo Mars. So after you've gone through some of these training experiences, then you're going to board the rocket. You're going to get on this Earth to Mars ride show that's going to transport you to Mars. And this area, Expo Mars, this is going to be the largest indoor simulated Mars environment anywhere in the world. It's going to trick all of your senses into thinking that you have just stepped off that rocket and arrived on Mars. Now you might say, how can we do that? What are the technologies we can employ to make that that feeling happen? Well, if you've ever been to Las Vegas or Atlantic City, been in some of the casinos, I think it's Caesar's Palace perhaps in Atlantic City, they have an area where you walk into this section of the building and you feel like you've just stepped out onto the streets of ancient Rome, you know, and there's a sky above you, and you're inside a building in Atlantic City. So it's all of those tricks that the entertainment industry uses that we're going to employ to make this a very real experience. Now, if you're a day visitor, after you get off that rocket, that Earth to Mars ride show, you're going to go out the left door, and it's going to lead you into a corridor that goes all the way around the simulated Mars environment and around the habitat. So there's a habitat on Mars. And you're going to get to look in. You're going to get to put your nose up against the glass. So think of, for instance, Biosphere 2, you know, that's way out in the desert, and yet a lot of people went all the way out there just to do that, to put their nose up against the glass and look in and see the people in this environment. Well, that's what the day visitors are going to get to do. Well, who are they looking at in there? They're looking at the multi-day guests. So if you go, and this is a much more immersive type of experience, but if you decide, well, I want to go all the way, I want to go for the multi-day experience, then, you know, it's certainly more expensive, but the first day you're going to get trained, and then the second or third or fourth day, you're going to be on Mars, and you're going to be living as if you were one of the early Mars settlers. So it's kind of interesting because now our multi-day guests become part of the attraction for the one-day guests. And there's this idea that, wow, I've got to come back now and do that because I want to have that experience. And something else I should say about the multi-day settler experience, this is a role-playing, immersive role-playing kind of thing. So when you go to Mars, you're going to have a job to do. You're not going to be just a tourist. So there's things like maybe working in the greenhouse, maybe I'm going to be a miner, maybe I'll be a prospector, maybe I'll be a media specialist, an artist. I just create artwork because I'm so inspired about what's going on here. So there's going to be programs developed around each of these specialties, each of these jobs, and you know, there's going to be something to gain for these people, something to lose. But the idea is that we want to have kind of a representative sample of what we think the cool and interesting jobs on Mars are going to be, and some of those jobs are going to appeal to different people. So if a family goes, maybe some of the kids want to be miners, maybe the dad wants to do something else, whatever, you know, we want to appeal to different people. So in a nutshell, that's the guest experience. So now let me talk about some more of the business-related factors that are going into putting this project together. Obviously, you've heard the expression location, location, location. Location is extremely important. We spent a long time trying to figure out where we wanted to go. And what we've done is we've entered into a long-term lease agreement on 75 acres in Titusville, Florida, which is the city just outside of Kennedy Space Center. And in fact, our particular site has 1,800 feet of frontage along the major corridor between Orlando and Kennedy Space Center. So the 1.6 million visitors per year that go to KSC, the vast majority of them are going to stream right by my site. So, you know, from what I've heard from people that I presented this to, I couldn't get a better location. Let's see, what else can I say? And I always like to point this fact out. We're 10 miles closer to the tourists than Kennedy Space Center is. In terms of price point, we wanted to make this affordable for most people. So we have some advisors that we're working with in the entertainment industry, and they advised very strongly to keep the price point for the day visitor under $100. Right now we're targeting about $90, and it's still kind of in a state of flux, but that's what we're basing our financials off of. And this is somewhat comparable to Disney or Universal or SeaWorld. I think they've just upped their prices and they're starting to approach this price point. And then if you add in parking,